Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to show you how to crochet these cute dolls which I have named Holly and Delilah. So for these dolls you will need a 4mm crochet hook and DK weight yarn. So thank you very much for watching and please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. So we are going to start off by making the first shoe down here, and to begin the shoe you want to do a slip knot. So to do a slip knot, take your yarn and take your finger and wrap the yarn around your finger once and then twice. Then take the first loop and pull it over the second loop, and then take the second loop and pull it all the way over your finger. You then want to take your crochet hook, go in through this space and pull tight, and there you have a slip knot. And now once you have your slip knot, we are now going to make our foundation chain, and we are going to chain 6. So chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And now we are ready to move on to round 1. So to begin round 1, we are going to do 2 single crochets into the second chain from the hook. So here is the first chain from the hook, and here is the second chain, and you want to go down into this chain and yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. So there we have 1 single crochet into that chain, and now go back down into the same chain again and do a second single crochet. So there we have 2 single crochets into the second chain from the hook, and now we are going to do 1 single crochet into the next chain, and then 1 into the next, and 1 into the next. So there we have 1 single crochet into the next 3 chains, and you should have 1 chain left at the end here, and we are going to do 4 single crochets into this last chain. So go down into the chain and do 4 single crochets. So like that. And now we are going to do 3 more single crochets, and we are going to be working into the opposite side of our foundation chain here. So far we did our slip knot, then our foundation chain up, and then we did single crochets down, and when we did 4 single crochets into this chain at the end, we turned the corner, and now we can begin working into the opposite side of our foundation chain. And we are going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 chains. So go down into this first chain into the opposite side and do 1 single crochet, and now do 1 single crochet into the next chain, and I am working over my end from my slip knot here, and then do 1 single crochet into the third chain, and you should have 1 chain left at the end, and we are going to do 2 single crochets into this last chain to finish like that. And now at the end of round 1 you should have 14 stitches, and we're going to finish off by doing a slip stitch into the first stitch or the first single crochet that we worked. So if you're not sure which stitch to go into, then you can count back 14 stitches. So count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14, and that will take you to the stitch that you need to do a slip stitch into. So go down into this stitch and yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. So there we have finished round 1, and this forms the bottom here of the first shoe, And now we are on to round 2. We are now on to round 2, and to begin this round you want to chain 1, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So we are going to start off by doing 2 single crochets into each of the first 2 stitches. So go down into this first stitch here and do 2 single crochets. And now you want to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch, like that. And now we are going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So do 1, 2 and 3. And now we are going to do 2 single crochets into each of the next 4 stitches. So here, here, here and here, you want to do 2 into each stitch. So I'm going to do 2 into this next one, and the next, and the third one along, and then the fourth, like that. And now you want to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2 and 3. And then finally, to finish off the round, we are going to do 2 single crochets into each of the last 2 stitches here. So do 2 into this next one, and then do 2 single crochets into the last stitch, like that. And at the end of this round you should have 22 single crochets, and we are going to finish off by going into the first single crochet of the round and working a slip stitch. So finish off with a slip stitch into the first single crochet, and now we are on to round 3. So to begin this round, chain 1, and we are going to do 2 single crochets into this first stitch, then 1 single crochet into the next stitch. So go down into the first stitch and do 2 single crochets, like that, and then do 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then you want to repeat that 1 more time. So do 2 single crochets both into the next stitch, and then do 1 into the next, like that. And now you want to do 3 single crochets, 1 into each stitch. So do 1 into 3, like that. And now we are going to do the same set of stitches as we did up here. So 2 single crochets into 1 stitch and 1 single crochet into the next, but we are going to do that set of stitches 4 times. So you want to do 2 single crochets into 1 stitch and then 1 single crochet into the next 4 times around the bottom here. So I'm going to do 2 both down into this next stitch, 2 single crochets, and then do 1 single crochet into the next stitch. And you want to repeat that 3 more times or 4 times in total. So like that. And now we're going to do 3 more single crochets, 1 into each stitch. So do 1 into the 1 stitch, and then the second one, and then the third one along. And then to finish off round 3, we are going to do 2 more sets of 2 single crochets into 1 stitch and then 1 single crochet into the next. So you want to do 2, 1, 2, 1. Finished working that for round 3, and at the end of this round you should have 30 single crochets, and it might be a good idea just to go back and double check that you do have 30. And now we're going to finish off by doing a slip stitch into the first single crochet of the round. So here's the first single crochet of the round, and if you're not sure which stitch to go into, then you can count back 30 stitches. But go down into this stitch and work a slip stitch. And now we are on to round 4. So for the next 2 rounds, for rounds 4 and 5, we are just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. So to begin each round, chain 1, and this chain 1 never counts as a stitch, and then you want to do 1 single crochet into each stitch for round 4, and there should be 30 single crochets in that round, and finish off by doing a slip stitch into the first single crochet that you worked, and then you want to do the same thing for round 5. Chain 1 and then do 1 single crochet into each stitch, and there should be 30 again, and then finish off with a slip stitch at the end of round 5. So do 2 rounds of plain single crochet. I have come to the end of round 5, and this is what you should have, and I would recommend that you quickly go back and double check that you do have 30 single crochets at the end of round 5, and if you do, we're ready to move on to round 6. So to begin this round, chain 1, and this does not count as a stitch, and we are going to start off by doing 8 single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the first 8 stitches. So go down into this first stitch here, so this first stitch which our chain 1 comes out of, and by doing that, that will keep your seam in the back here. So go down into this first stitch and do 1 single crochet, and then do 1 into the next, and keep going until you have 8. So like that. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8. And now around the bottom here, we are going to do a stitch called 2 single crochets together. And we are going to do that stitch 7 times. And when we do 2 single crochets together, we are doing 2 single crochets, 1 into each stitch, but we are not going to complete either of them, and then we're going to complete them both together at the same time. So we're effectively turning 2 stitches into 1, and we're going to use this stitch a lot throughout our doll. So we're going to go down into this first stitch here and yarn over and pull up a loop, but do not complete the single crochet. So usually we would yarn over and pull through these 2 loops, but we're not going to do that. You want to stop here and move on to the next one. So go down into the next stitch and yarn over and pull up a loop. So there we have started a second single crochet. So you do not want to complete this one either, and you should have 3 loops on your hook, and you want to yarn over and pull through all 3. So there we have done 2 single crochets together, and we have turned 2 stitches into 1, and we are going to do that stitch 7 times, so 6 more times. So go down into the next stitch and do an incomplete single crochet, and then do an incomplete single crochet into the next stitch, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So there we have done a second set of 2 single crochets together, and keep going until you have 7. So here I'm going to do my 3rd set, and then my 4th, and now 5th. So you go down into 1 stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, then go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So there I have my 5th and now 6th. And then finish off with a 7th set of 2 single crochets together like that. And this is starting to close up the toe of our shoe. And now we are going to finish off by doing 8 single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the last 8 stitches. The end of round 6, and at the end of this round you should have 23 stitches. So we have cut out 7 stitches down the bottom here, and now we want to finish off by doing a slip stitch into the first single crochet of the round like that. And now we are on to round 7. So to begin this round, chain 1, and we are going to do 7 single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the first 7 stitches. Like that. And now we are going to do 2 single crochets together over these next 2 stitches. So do 2 single crochets together, and then into the next stitch we are just going to do 1 single crochet. So go down into this next stitch here and do 1 single crochet, and you want to repeat those stitches 2 more times. So do 2 single crochets together over these next 2 stitches, and then do a single crochet into the next stitch, and then do that for a final time. Do 2 single crochets together, and then do 1 single crochet into the next stitch like that. And now you want to finish off by doing 7 last single crochets. So I have finished working that for round 7, and at the end of this round you should have 20 stitches. And now at the end of this round, whilst working the slip stitch, we are going to change colours. So we are going to change to our sock colour. So we are here, we have just finished the top of the shoe, and now we are going to change to our sock colour. And I'm going with a white, but you can choose whatever little sock colour you want. So you want to go down into the first single crochet of the round, but instead of yarning over and pulling through these 2 loops, you want to drop the yarn that you were using and then take your new colour or your new yarn, place it over the end of your crochet hook and pull it through. So pull through these 2 loops. And now you can fasten off the colour that you were using. So cut this green yarn, your shoe colour, leaving a tail to weave in or work over later, and we are ready to move on to round 8. So to begin round 8 you want to chain 1, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch, and I am using my new colour here, and we're going to start off by working 7 single crochets. So go down into the very first stitch here and work 1 single crochet. So go down into this first one, and you can work over your ends here. So work a single crochet, and then do 1 single crochet into the next stitch along, and I'm just going to work over my ends for 2 stitches just to secure them, and then I'm going to bring them to the outside of the shoe and then weave them in once I'm done. So then you want to do a 3rd single crochet and a 4th, 5th, and 7th. So there we have 7 single crochets, and now we are going to do 3 sets of 2 single crochets together around the bottom. So you want to do 2 single crochets together 3 times. And this can be a little bit tricky as our shoe does come inwards, so the toe has been closed up already, so it can be a little bit tricky to work these stitches, but try to work them nice and tight and neat. So I'm going to do my 3rd set of 2 single crochets together, and then you want to do 7 single crochets to finish. Finished working that for round 8, and at the end of this round you should have 17 stitches, and I finished off by working a slip stitch at the end. And now we're on to round 9. So we are now on to round 9, and I have just finished working round 9 here, so I have already done it. But for this round, what you want to do is chain 1, and then you want to do 8 single crochets to begin round 9, and then do 2 single crochets together, so 1 set of 2 single crochets together, and then finish off by doing 7 single crochets. So we're doing 8 single crochets, 2 single crochets together times 1, and then 7 single crochets, so 8, 2 together, 7 single crochets. And then you want to finish off this round, so round 9. So once you have done that, finish off by doing a slip stitch into the first single crochet that you worked, and then once you have done that, you want to finish off with a slip stitch like I have just done there, and you should have 16 stitches at the end of round 9. And now we are moving on to round 10, but before we can move on to this round, we need to stuff our shoe, so stuff our little doll's shoe. So you want to pull your hook out and your yarn, and I like to just pull this out to make a big loop so that it doesn't come undone. And before you stuff it, you need to make sure that all of the ends here, so all of the ends from our slip knot and our colour change have been pulled through to the outside, and that way you can weave them in later and they don't get lost within the shoe. And you want to take some stuffing. So for my doll, I am using this polyester toy stuffing. So I'm going to take a little bit and stuff the shoe, or stuff what I have so far. So there I have added some stuffing to the shoe, and you do want to make sure that this is quite firm, so that the shoes are quite firm. And now we're on to round 10. So chain 1, and round 10 is just a plain round of single crochet. So we're just doing 1 single crochet into each stitch. So do 1 down into this first stitch here. Like that. And the next stitch. And keep going all the way around, and I like to kind of push the stuffing down behind this stitch that I'm working into. So before I work into this stitch, I'm just going to push the stuffing down to make it easier to get into. So keep doing that all the way around for round 10. So I have worked that all the way around for round 10, and you should have 16 single crochets. And now for the next 4 rounds, so for rounds 11, 12, 13 and 14, we are just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. But from now on, with the rest of the leg, so the rest of the leg of our doll here, we're not going to be using slip stitches. So we're just going to be working in kind of a spiral. We're not going to be using any slip stitches, and that will stop us from having a big seam at the back of the leg. So instead of using slip stitches, we are going to be using a stitch marker to mark the first stitch of each round. So we'll place the stitch marker into the first stitch of every round, work your round, and then when you reach that stitch marker, you know you have come to the end of the round and it's time to move on to the next one. So then you remove your stitch marker, work the first stitch of the new round, and then place the stitch marker back into that first stitch, so into the first single crochet of the next round. So you want to do 4 rounds of plain single crochet, and we're not going to be using slip stitches anymore. Instead, we're going to mark the first stitch of each round with a stitch marker. And if you don't have a stitch marker, you can just use a safety pin or another piece of yarn in a different colour. So we're going to do our first stitch here into the first single crochet of last round. So we're not going to work a slip stitch. Instead, we're just going to go into the first stitch of last round. So go into that first stitch and work a single crochet. And as this is the first single crochet of round 11, I'm going to take my stitch marker and place it into that first stitch. Like that. And now you just want to do 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around for round 11, and when you reach the stitch marker, you know you have come to the end of round 11 and you can move on to round 12. So you want to do 4 rounds of plain single crochet, and in each round you should still have 16 single crochets. So I'm just coming to the end of round 14, so I have done all of those rounds and I'm coming to the end of round 14, and as you can see I have 1 stitch left to work into here, and whilst working this last single crochet I'm going to change colours. So I'm going to change colours to the skin colour, which I'm going to be using. So we have finished our sock, so now you want to change colours to the colour that you want the skin, or the colour that you want the legs. So I'm going to go into this next stitch here. So go into the next stitch and start to work my single crochet. But I'm not going to complete this single crochet in this colour. I'm going to drop the yarn that I was using and then take my new yarn. So this is the skin colour that I am using, but you can use any colour you like. So I'm going to take this colour, place it over the end of my hook and pull it through. And you can then fasten off the colour that you were using, and we have completed the sock, and we have come to the end of round 14, and we have our new yarn or our new colour ready to use for round 15. So to begin round 15, you want to start off by removing your stitch marker, and we are going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch for round 15. But in this round, and this round only, we are just going to be working into the back loop of each stitch. So you want to go down into this first stitch here, and if you have a look at our stitches, each stitch has a front loop which is here, and then a back loop. So we have a front loop and then a back loop and a front and a back, and usually when we crochet we go through both of these loops, but in this round we're just going to be working into the back loop of each stitch, and that is going to create this little ridge here which separates the socks from the leg. So go down into this first stitch here and you want to just go into the back loop, and I have added some more stuffing to my work. So when I came to the end of the sock, I just stuffed the sock with some more of my stuffing. So I'm going to go down into this next stitch and work a single crochet just into the back loop. And then you want to take your stitch marker and place it into that stitch as it is the first stitch of the round. Like that. So you just want to go into the next stitch here and just go down into the back loop and do a single crochet, and then go into the back loop of the next stitch and just continue this all the way around, one single crochet into the back loop of each stitch. So I have come to the end of round 15, and you can see that that gives us our little ridge like this. And now we are on to round 16. So I have already removed my stitch marker here. And in round 16, we are going to do 2 single crochets together over the first 2 stitches, and then we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. So you want to do 2 single crochets together over the first 2 stitches, and we're going back to working normally. So we're going to be going through both the front and back loop of each stitch. So we were just working into the back loop last round, and now we're going back to working into both the front and back loop. So we're going to do 2 single crochets together over these first 2 stitches, and you want to place your stitch marker into that stitch as it is the first stitch of this round. And now we are going to do 6 single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. So we're going to do 1 into the next stitch and 1 into the next, and keep going until you have 6. Like that. And now we are going to repeat that again. We're going to do 2 single crochets together and then 1 single crochet into each of the last 6 stitches. Like that. So there I have come to the end of round 16, and at the end of this round you should have 14 stitches, and we are now on to round 17. So for the next 15 rounds, so for rounds 17 all the way up to round 31, so 15 rounds, we are just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. So you want to remove the stitch marker and work a single crochet down into that first stitch, and then place the stitch marker back into that stitch, and then do 1 single crochet into each stitch around. And then you want to move on to the next round and do the same thing again. Remove the stitch marker, work your first single crochet, place the stitch marker back into that stitch, and work single crochets all the way around, and you want to do that for 15 rounds, so for rounds 17 through to 31. And once you have done that, you will have completed the first leg like this. So the first shoe, sock and leg. And as you are working those rounds of plain single crochet, you want to keep stuffing the leg. So I'm just going to take a small bit of stuffing every 3 or so rounds and add it to the leg. Do not leave it right to the end without adding any stuffing, as it will be really hard to get it down into this bottom section. So I would recommend stuffing it every 3 to 4 or 5 rounds. So just keep working rounds of plain single crochet until you get to the end of round 31, and it's really important that you have 14 single crochets in each round that you do. So there I have finished working those rounds. So I came to the end of round 31, and then when I got to the end I fastened off. So you want to pull your yarn out and your hook and cut your yarn, leaving a tail to work over or weave in later. And there we have finished our first leg. And as I said, as you go, you want to stuff this leg. So I have some stuffing right here at the top. And now once you have finished that first leg, you want to go ahead and make a second one in the exact same way. So you can go back in the video or the written pattern and work all of those steps again, all the way from round 1 up to 31. So you want to make the shoe and the sock and the leg in the exact same way. And then once you have both legs, we can move on to making the body. So we're going to move on to round 1 of the body. To begin round 1 of the body, you want to take one of the legs. So our legs are going to be like this. So you want to take one of the legs, it doesn't matter which one. I'm going to take this one here and turn it around to the back, and you want to insert your hook into the furthest stitch on the side here. So I have the first leg and I have turned it around to the back, and you want to insert your hook into the furthest stitch on the right hand side. So I'm going with this stitch here. So you want to insert your hook into that stitch, so the furthest stitch on the right hand side, and we are going to attach our yarn into that stitch. So take your yarn. So you want to take your new yarn and be using the same colour as the leg, place it over your hook, pull it through, and then chain 1. So chain 1. So there we have attached our yarn into that stitch. So I'll just go over that again. You want to take one of the legs, it doesn't matter which one, and then with the back of the leg facing you, go to the furthest stitch on the right hand side here. So if we have a look, we have a circle here, and then we have the front and the back, and you want to go to the right hand side and the furthest stitch on the right hand side, attach your yarn into that stitch. And now we are going to work 7 single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the first 7 stitches. So go down into this first stitch here and work 1 single crochet, and then do 1 into the next stitch and the third one along, and I am pushing down my stuffing here behind the stitches. So I'm going to do a third one and keep going until you have 7. So there I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 single crochets, and that should take you halfway around this first leg. So you should now be on the opposite side here, and we are going to chain 1. So chain 1, and then you want to take your other leg here. So take the other leg, and we are going to do the same thing as we did here. We are going to go into the furthest stitch on the right hand side. So with the back of this other leg facing you, go to the furthest stitch here on the right hand side. So I would say that that is one of these two here. I'm going to go with this one. So this one here, and you want to insert your hook into that stitch like that, and we're going to do a single crochet, and this is going to join our 2 legs. So we have inserted our hook into that stitch, and now you want to do 1 single crochet into that stitch like that. So there we have done 7 single crochets, chain 1, and then a single crochet into the furthest stitch on the right hand side of the other leg. And now we are just going to do 1 single crochet into every stitch around this leg, and that should be 14 in total. So we have done 1 here, so we should do 13 more. So go down into the next stitch and do 1 single crochet, and then do 1 into the next, and keep going all the way around. So I have finished working those single crochets all the way around, and you should have 14 around this leg, and I would definitely recommend that you go back and double check that you do have 14, as it can be quite easy to mess up, especially where you finished off the leg here. And also make sure that this end from the end of the leg is on the outside. So I have done 14 single crochets, and if you have a look at my work, this is where we worked the first single crochet into this leg, and I have worked my last one into the last stitch here. And now you want to chain 1, so chain 1, and we are going to go back over to the first leg, and here we have the stitch that we worked that 7th single crochet into, and we are going to go into the next stitch, so the first stitch which has not been worked into here. So go into that stitch and work a single crochet, so a nice neat single crochet, and that is going to join the 2 legs along the front. And now you just want to do 1 single crochet into each stitch until you meet where you started, and that should be 7, and that will give you 14 single crochets around this first leg here. So we're going to do 1 into the next stitch and the next, and keep going until you meet where you started. So there I have come to the end of round 1 of the body, and at the end of this round you should have 30 stitches, and that should include the 2 little chain ones that you worked, and it's really important that you do have 30, so I would recommend that you just go back and double check that you do, and this is what you should have. So we have connected our 2 legs here, so we have worked around each leg, and then we have a chain 1 on each side. And that is how we join our legs like this, and we can move on to our body. And we are not going to be working a slip stitch at the end of this round. We are going to be working in a spiral or a continuous round, just as we did with the legs. So do not work a slip stitch at the end of round 1. And now we're ready to move on to round 2. So to begin round 2, you want to do 9 single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the first 9 stitches. So we're going to go down into this first stitch here, so the first single crochet from round 1, and this one can be a little bit tricky to get into. So go into this single crochet and work 1 single crochet, and remember to place a stitch marker into this stitch. So there is my stitch marker, and now I'm going to do my second single crochet and keep going until you have 9. So there I have 9 single crochets, and these little chain ones can be really tricky to go into, but you do have to go into them, so just keep trying. So there I have 9 single crochets, and now into this next stitch we are going to do 2 single crochets, both into this one, like that. And we're going to repeat that set of stitches 2 more times, and that will take you to where you started. So you want to do 1 single crochet into 9 stitches, and then 2 single crochets into the next, then 1 single crochet into 9 stitches, and 2 single crochets into the last stitch at the end. So repeat that 2 more times. So there I have come to the end of round 2 of the body, and at the end of this round you should have 33 single crochets. And now we're on to round 3. So remove your stitch marker, and we are going to work 10 single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the first 10 stitches. So go down into this first stitch here and work 1 single crochet, remembering to place your stitch marker back into this stitch. Like that, and keep going until you have 10. So here's 8, 9 and 10, like that. And now into the next stitch we are going to do 2 single crochets, both into this one. So go into the next stitch and do 2, and we're going to keep repeating that all the way around for round 3. So you want to do 10 single crochets and then 2 into the next, and you should do that 2 more times. So I have come to the end of round 3, and at the end of this round you should have 36 stitches. And now we're on to round 4. So I have already removed my stitch marker, and in this round we are going to do 5 single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches, and then 2 single crochets into the next stitch all the way around. So do 5 single crochets, placing your stitch marker into the first stitch of the round. Like that. And now do 2 single crochets, both into the next stitch. And you want to just keep repeating that all the way around for round 4. 5 single crochets and then 2 into the next. I have finished working that all the way around for round 4, and at the end of this round you should have 42 single crochets, and I would recommend that you go back and double check that you do have 42 at this point, as it's really important that you have that number. And now we are on to round 5. So for the next 9 rounds, so for rounds 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13, so 9 rounds, we're just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. So you want to remove your stitch marker, do 1 single crochet into that first stitch, and then place the stitch marker back into that stitch, and then do 1 single crochet into each stitch around until you reach the stitch marker. And you want to do that all the way around for rounds 5 through to 13 of the body. So that's 9 rounds. And in each round you should still have 42 single crochets. So that's why it's important that you have that number at the end of round 4. As we are doing a lot of rounds of plain single crochet, you need to make sure that you have the right number before you do that. So go ahead and do 9 rounds of 1 single crochet into each stitch until you get to the end of round 13. I have finished working those rounds and I have come to the end of round 13, and this is what you should have. So you can see that our body is starting to form, and now we are going to move on to round 14. So remove your stitch marker, and in this round we are going to do 5 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together all the way around. So you want to do 1 single crochet into each of the first 5 stitches. Like that, and then you want to do 2 single crochets together over these next 2 stitches. So just like we did down the bottom for the shoes, you do 2 incomplete single crochets and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So there we have done 5 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together, and you want to keep repeating that all the way around for round 14. So I have finished working that for round 14, and at the end of this round you should have 36 stitches, and that is our first decrease round of the body. And now we can move on to round 15, and round 15 is just a simple round of single crochet. So we're just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. I have finished working that all the way around for round 15, and at the end of this round you should still have 36 stitches, so you should have worked 36 single crochets. And now we are on to round 16, and round 16 is very similar to round 14, but in round 14 we did 5 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches, and in this round we are going to do 4 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. So you want to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, placing your stitch marker back into this stitch here, and then you want to do 1 single crochet into the second stitch and the third and then the fourth. So there we have 4 single crochets, and now you want to do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. And just keep working this all the way around. So I have finished working that for round 16, and at the end of this round you should have 30 stitches, and it's really important that you do have 30 at this point, so I would recommend that you quickly go back and double check that you do have 30, and if you do, we're ready to move on to round 17. So for the next 5 rounds, so for rounds 17, 18, 19, 20 and 21, so 5 rounds, we are just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch, so just like we did down here. So to begin each round, remove the stitch marker and work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, and then place the stitch marker back into that stitch, and then you just want to do 1 single crochet into every single stitch around, and then you know you have come to the end of the round when you reach the stitch marker, and you should find that you still have 30 stitches in each round. So do 5 rounds of plain single crochet. So I have come to the end of round 21, and this is what you should have. So you can see we have formed the majority of our body, and as I went along I added some stuffing. So I added some more of my toy stuffing, and make sure that you get it right down here into the leg section, so between the legs and the body, and then just stuff it like this. And you want to stuff it maybe every 4 or 5 rounds as you go. And now we are on to round 22. So for round 22 we are going to do 3 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together all the way around. So remove your stitch marker, like that, and we are going to do 3 single crochets, 1 into each stitch. So there I have 1, and place the stitch marker back in, and then 2, and then 3. So there I have 3, 1 into each stitch, and now we are going to do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. Like that, and just keep repeating that all the way around for this round. I have come to the end of round 22, and at the end of this round you should have 24 stitches. And now for rounds 23 and 24, so the next 2 rounds, you just want to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. So just as we have done many times before, do 2 rounds of 1 single crochet into every stitch, and in each of those 2 rounds you should have 24 single crochets. So I have worked rounds 23 and 24, and then I added some more stuffing at the end of round 24 so that I have stuffed my doll up to this point. And now we are on to round 25. So in this round we are going to do 1 single crochet into 1 stitch, then 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 single crochets together. So we're doing 1, 1, 2 together, 1, 1, 2 together, all the way around for round 25. And as we are going to be decreasing quite a lot in this round, it's really important that you have stuffed your doll up to this point before we move on to round 25. So remove the stitch marker, and we are going to do 2 single crochets, 1 into each stitch, like that, and then we are going to do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. And now do that again, do 2 single crochets, 1 into each stitch, and then do 2 single crochets together like that, and keep working that all the way around. So I have come to the end of round 25, and at the end of this round you should have 18 stitches. So we cut out 6 from last round. And now before we move on to the next round, I'm going to take a bit more stuffing and add this to my doll, so just to stuff that last round. And now we can move on to round 26. So round 26 is similar, but in this round we are going to do 1 single crochet into 1 stitch and then 2 single crochets together. So we're doing 1, 2 together, 1, 2 together, all the way around. So there I have worked my first single crochet and I have placed my stitch marker into that stitch, and now we're going to do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches like that, and then we're going to do that again. Do 1 single crochet into the next stitch and then do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches, and just keep repeating that for round 26. I've come to the end of round 26, and at the end of this round you should have 12 stitches, and then I went ahead and added some more of my stuffing, and you want to make sure that you do stuff this quite well as it does have to support the head, but you don't want to overstuff it, so you shouldn't see any stuffing kind of bulging through these spaces here. So this is how well I have stuffed mine, and then we can move on to round 27. And in this round we are going to go back to doing 2 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together. So we are doing 1, 1, 2 together, 1, 1, 2 together, all the way around for this round. So do 1 single crochet into the first stitch and place the stitch marker into this stitch. And then we're going to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch, so the second stitch along, and then you want to do 2 single crochets together, so 2 together. And just repeat that all the way around for round 27, 1, 1, 2 together. So there we have finished round 27, and at the end of this round you should have 9 stitches, and it's important that you do have that number, so go back and count and check you do have 9, and then you want to add some stuffing to this last round or two. So just take some of your stuffing, and it can be quite difficult to get it in here, but a tip is to use the end of your crochet hook to kind of smush it down in there. And then we can move on to round 28. And round 28 is the first round of the neck. So the neck of our doll is made up of 2 rounds, rounds 28 and 29, and we are just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. So for round 28, do 1 single crochet into each stitch, and then do the same thing for round 29. And in each of those rounds, you should have 9 single crochets. So you want to do 2 rounds of plain single crochet. So there I have worked those 2 rounds, so I came to the end of round 29, and this is what you should have. So we get this little neck here, and now we can move on to round 1 of the head. So we have come to the end of round 29, which is the end of the neck, and this is the last round of the body, and now the next round is going to be round 1 of the head. So for round 1 of the head, we're just going to do 2 single crochets into each stitch. So you want to go down into the next stitch here and do 2 single crochets, placing your stitch marker into the first stitch of the round. Like that, and then you want to do 2 single crochets, both into this next stitch, and then 2 into the next, and just continue that for round 1, 2 single crochets into each stitch. So there I have finished round 1, and at the end of this round you should have 18 single crochets, and I would recommend going back and double checking that you do have 18 to make sure that you are starting the head on the right track. And now we can move on to round 2. So in round 2 we are going to do 2 single crochets into one stitch and then 1 single crochet into the next stitch. So we're doing 2 1 2 1 all the way around. So remove your stitch marker and go down into the first stitch here and do 2 single crochets both into this one, placing the stitch marker into the first stitch of the round. So there I have 1 single crochet into that stitch, and now I'm going to work a second one. So there I have 2 into the first stitch, and now do 1 single crochet into the next one, and then do 2 both into this next stitch here, like that, and then do 1 into the next, and keep repeating 2 1 2 1 all the way around. So that I have come to the end of round 2, and this is what you should have. So it does look a little bit strange, but this will eventually become the head. And at the end of this round you should have 27 single crochets. And now we are on to round 3. So to begin this round you want to do 2 single crochets into the first stitch here, and place the stitch marker into the first one, and now we are going to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 1 single crochet into the next, and we're going to keep repeating that all the way around. So we'll do 2 single crochets into this next stitch here, then 1 into the next, and then 1 single crochet into the next, then 2 into the next, 1 into the next, 1 into the next, all the way around. So we'll keep repeating 2 1 1 2 1 1. So there I have finished working that all the way around for round 3, and at the end of this round you should have 36 single crochets. And now for round 4 we are going to do 2 single crochets into one stitch and then 1 single crochet into 8 stitches all the way around. So we're doing 2 into 1 and then 1 into 8 all the way around. So you want to do 2 single crochets into the first stitch and place the stitch marker into the first stitch of the round. So that I have 2 into that first one, and then I'm going to put my stitch marker in the first one that I worked there, and then do 1 single crochet into each of the next 8 stitches and keep working that all the way around. So there I have finished working that for round 4, and at the end of this round you should have 40 single crochets, and I would recommend that you go back and double check that you do have 40. And now for the next 9 rounds, so for rounds 5 through to 13, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, we're just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. So we are doing 9 rounds of plain single crochet, just as we have done lots and lots of times before. And in each round you should still have 40 single crochets. So I have finished working those rounds of plain single crochet, and this is what you should have. So we have finished the main part of the head. So this is what it looks like, and I haven't added any stuffing to the head just yet. And now we can move on to round 14. So for round 14, we are going to do 1 single crochet into 8 stitches and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches all the way around. So start off by removing your stitch marker and now do 8 single crochets or 1 single crochet into 8 stitches. So like that. So there I have 8 single crochets, and now we are going to do 2 single crochets together over these next 2 stitches here, just like we have done lots of times before. And you just want to keep repeating that for round 14. So I have finished working that all the way around for round 14, and at the end of this round you should have 36 stitches. And now we're moving on to round 15, and this round is very similar, but in this round we are going to do 4 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches all the way around. So you want to do 4 single crochets, 2 single crochets together, 4 single crochets, 2 single crochets together all the way around for round 15. So there I have finished round 15, and at the end of this round you should have 30 stitches around. So we are decreasing at the top of our head to close it up. And now we are on to round 16, and round 16 follows the same pattern, but we are going to do 3 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together all the way around. So last round we did 4 and then 2 together, and in this round we are going to do 3 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together. So you just want to keep repeating that for round 16. So do 3 single crochets, like that, and now do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches, and just continue that for this round. Okay, so we have come to the end of round 16, and at the end of this round you should have 24 stitches. And now before we move on to the next round, I'm just going to add a little bit of stuffing to the head, as next round we're going to be decreasing even more, and it will be hard to get some stuffing down into the neck and the bottom of the head if we go any further. So add a little bit of stuffing to the head. So like that, so I have started to stuff the head, and you do want the head to be quite firm. If you have a look at one of my dolls here, I have made the heads quite firm, so there is quite a bit of stuffing in here, but again you don't want to overstuff so that you have stuffing peeking through these holes or anything like that. So you do want it quite firm. And now we're going to move on to round 17, and this round follows the same pattern. We're going to do 2 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches all the way around. So you want to do 1 single crochet into 2 stitches, then 2 single crochets together all the way around for round 17. Have come to the end of round 17, and you should have 18 stitches at the end of this round. And now we are on to round 18, and this round follows the same pattern, but we are going to do 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets together all the way around. So you want to do 1, 2 together, 1, 2 together all the way around for round 18. And before you move on to this round, you may want to add a little bit of extra stuffing, as we are decreasing quite a lot next round, so it can be hard to stuff the head then. So add a little bit more stuffing before you move on to round 18, and then just do 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets together all the way around. So there we have finished round 18, and at the end of this round you should have 12 stitches, and I went ahead and added a little bit of extra stuffing at the end of that round just to fill up that round. And now we are on to the last round of our head, which is round 19, and this will finish the main part of our doll. And for this round we are just going to keep doing 2 single crochets together all the way around, and you should do that 6 times. So do 2 single crochets together over the first 2 stitches, and you could place a stitch marker into this stitch, but I'm just going to count mine. So there I have 1 set of 2 single crochets together, and now do a second one, and then a third, and do this all the way around, and that should be 6. So there I have done that all the way around, so you should have 6 stitches at the end of this round, and then you want to go ahead and add a final bit of stuffing to the head, and then once you have done that, fasten off, so pull your yarn out and your hook and cut your yarn, and you want to leave a nice long tail, as we're going to use this to sew up the top of the head. So leave a long tail or a long end, and we are going to finish off by taking a yarn needle or a tapestry needle and weaving the end through this needle, and we are going to sew up the top of the head by weaving this needle in and out of these stitches. So go into the next stitch and pull the yarn through, and then go in from the inside into the next stitch, and then go into the next one, and then come from the inside into the next, and the next, and then the final one. So weave that end in and out of those stitches and then pull it tight, and that will close up the top of the head. And now you just want to secure this end into the head, so weave it in and out of these stitches at the top, and then you can thread it through to the inside of the head and cut it off, making sure that it's nice and secure. So secure it into these stitches at the top and then thread it into the inside, pull it tight and cut it off. So there we have finished the main part of our doll. So this is what you should have, and now we can move on to the arms. We are now going to move on to make the arms of our doll, and this is what the arms look like, and we need 2 of these in the exact same way. So I'm going to show you how to do one and then go ahead and make a second identical one. So to begin the arms, you want to do a magic circle. So to do a magic circle, take your yarn and take your finger and wrap the yarn around your finger once, and then wrap the yarn back over your finger to create a cross, like that. You then want to take your crochet hook and go underneath the first loop of the cross, and then using your crochet hook, pick up the second loop of the cross and pull it through. And you can then take your finger out, and there we have a magic circle, and we are ready to begin round 1. So to begin round 1, you want to chain 1, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. This just locks our magic circle into place. So now for round 1, we are going to do 5 single crochets into the magic circle. So 5 single crochets. So go into the magic circle and do 1, and then a second one, and then just keep going until you have 5. Like that. And now to finish off round 1, you want to close up your magic circle. So take this tail end here from where you made the magic circle and pull it tight, and that will close it up. And now we can move on to round 2. So for round 2, we are going to do 2 single crochets into each stitch, and we're not going to be using slip stitches. We're going to go straight to using our stitch marker. So you want to go down into the first stitch from last round, and if you're not sure which stitch to go into, then you can count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So go down into this first stitch. So go into the first stitch from last round and do 2 single crochets, and then you want to place your stitch marker into the first stitch that you worked, so here. And now you want to do 2 single crochets down into this next stitch. And then 2 both into the next. And keep doing this all the way around. Like that. So there I have come to the end of round 2, and at the end of this round you should have 10 single crochets. And now for the next few rounds, so for rounds 3 through to 8, so that is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 6 rounds. So for the next 6 rounds, you just want to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. So do 6 rounds of plain single crochet. Come to the end of round 8, and at the end of this round you should have 10 single crochets. So you should have had 10 single crochets in each of those 6 rounds, and this is what you should have. And now for round 9, we're going to do 2 single crochets together over the first 2 stitches, and then 1 single crochet into each of the last 8 stitches. So do 2 single crochets together over these first 2 stitches, like that. And you could place a stitch marker into that stitch, but I'm not going to, I'm just going to count. And now you want to do 8 single crochets, or 1 single crochet into each of the last 8 stitches. Finished working that for round 9, and at the end of this round you should have 9 stitches. And then when I got to the end of that round, I added a little bit of stuffing to the bottom here, so I added some stuffing. And now for the next 14 rounds of the arm, so it's the last 14 rounds, we are just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. So we are doing 14 rounds of plain single crochet, and that should take you to the end of round 23. So from rounds 10 to 23, that's 14 rounds. You just want to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. And in each round that you do, you should have 9 single crochets. And I would definitely recommend getting a piece of paper and writing down all of those rounds and ticking them off as you go. Or if you have my written pattern, I already have made a chart on there with all of the tick boxes, so you can tick them off as you go, and it's easier that way to keep track. So for rounds 10 through to 23, do 1 single crochet into each stitch. And then as you are doing that, every 3 to 4 rounds, you want to add a small amount of stuffing to the arms. So every 3 or 4 rounds, add a little bit of stuffing, and you don't want to overstuff them. You don't want them to be too full. The way that I have done it is I have added more stuffing to the bottom of the arm. So this would be the hands, and then as I went up, I gradually added less. So I added less up here in this long section. So just add a small amount of stuffing every 3 to 4 rounds. So keep doing 1 single crochet into each stitch until you get to the end of round 23. And once you have done that, this is what you should have. So here I have those 23 rounds. And when you get to the end of the last round, fasten off, so pull your yarn out and your hook and cut your yarn. And you need to make sure that you leave a long tail end, as you can use this end to sew the arm to the body. And then once you have done that and you have added your final bit of stuffing, to finish the arm we need to sew it up using the whip stitch, and I will show you how to do that now. Take a yarn needle and weave that long end through the yarn needle, and we are going to do the whip stitch along this opening. So with the whip stitch, you go in 1 stitch here on one side and through to the same stitch on the opposite side and pull the yarn through. And then with the whip stitch, you always come back around to the same side and go through both stitches and pull it through. And then you come back around to the same side again and go through both stitches here. And then the last one, back through to the same side and through. And then do not cut this yarn, as we will use it to sew the arm to the body once we have made all of the different pieces. So go ahead now and make a second arm in the exact same way, and then we will have the body and the arms complete, and we can move on to the last section, which is the hair. We are now going to move on to making our doll's hair. So we are going to make the main section of the hair here, so this main section first, and then we will add the 2 little bunches at the end. So to begin the hair, you want to start off by making a band like this. So I'm going to be doing this doll with red hair. So I have made a band like this in this really pretty red-orange colour. So you want to make a band like this. So to do that, you want to start off by making a slip knot and then chaining 40. So make a slip knot just as we did at the beginning of the legs, and then chain 40. And now we are going to turn our foundation chain, which we have here, into a foundation ring. So to do that, you want to go down to the first chain that you worked and be really careful to make sure that there are absolutely no twists in your chain. So go along it really slowly, making sure there are no twists, and go down to the first chain and work a slip stitch. So work a slip stitch into that first chain, and that will turn our foundation chain into a foundation ring. So you should have a foundation ring of 40 in the colour that you want your hair to be, and I'm just going to show you how to make that band on this small bit of black here, but for my doll I am doing the red hair and I will pick that back up in a second. So you want to chain 40 and make a foundation ring. And now for round 1 you want to chain 1 and do 1 single crochet into each chain, and that should be 40. So go down into this first chain that our chain 1 comes out of and do 1 single crochet, and you want to try and make this nice and neat as this is going to be right on the edge of the head. And now do 1 single crochet into the next chain and 1 into the next and 1 into the next, and keep going all the way along 40 single crochets. So I have finished working that all the way around, so you should have 40 single crochets, and I would really recommend that you go back and double check that you do have 40, as it can be really easy to mess up when you're working into chains. So make sure that you have 40 single crochets, and if you do, we are on to round 2. So for the next 6 rounds, so for rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, so 6 rounds, we are just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. And we are not going to be using a slip stitch in any of those rounds. We're going to keep using our stitch marker, and that will prevent us from having a seam. So to begin each round, you want to go into the first single crochet of the round. So here I have my first single crochet, and it is a bit tricky to see here because I'm working in black, but go into your first single crochet and work 1 single crochet and place the stitch marker into that stitch like that. And now you just want to do 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So I'm going to do 1 into the next one and 1 into the next, and continue this all the way around until you reach your stitch marker, and you should have 40 single crochets in that round, and then do that again. Remove your stitch marker, work your first single crochet into that stitch, place the stitch marker back down into that first single crochet, and then do 1 single crochet into each stitch around. And you want to do that for 6 rounds. And then once you have done that, this is what you should have. So you will have the band for your hair, and when you place it on your doll, this is what it should look like. So here we have our foundation chain, and this is what the band looks like. So I have done rounds 1 through to 7, and now the last part of our hair, we need to close up this section at the back. So I will show you how to do that now. Here I have come to the end of round 7. So once you have done those rounds, this is what you will have. This is the band. And now we can move on to round 8. So for round 8, we are going to do 6 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches all the way around. So do 1 into the first stitch, placing a stitch marker into that stitch like that, and now you want to do a second single crochet and a third, fourth, fifth and 6th, and then do 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches, and keep repeating that all the way around for round 8. So there I have finished working that for round 8. So we have started to decrease for the back of the hair, and now we are on to round 9, and this round follows the same pattern, but in this round, instead of doing 6 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together, we are going to do 5 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together. So do that first. Set of 5 single crochets, so there I have 5, and now you want to do 2 single crochets together over these next 2 stitches. And just keep repeating that. So there I have come to the end of round 9, and now for the rest of the hair we are just going to keep working rounds following the same pattern. So for round 10, the next round, we are going to do 4 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches all the way around. And then for round 11, we are going to do 3 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together all the way around. So keep repeating that for round 11. And then for round 12, we are going to do 2 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together all the way around. So you do 1, 1, 2 together, 1, 1, 2 together for round 12, and then for round 13 we are going to do 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets together all the way around. So for the next few rounds you just want to keep working rounds following that pattern. So with each round you have 1 less single crochet between your sets of 2 single crochets together. So round 10 it's 4 single crochets, for round 11 it's 3 single crochets, for round 12 it's 2, and then 13 it's 1 single crochet. So keep working that until you get to the end of round 13. So I have finished working those rounds, so I have come to the end of round 13, and now for round 14, which is the final round of our hair, we are just going to do sets of 2 single crochets together all the way around. So last round we did 1 single crochet, then 2 single crochets together, then 1 single crochet and 2 single crochets together all the way around. And this round you just want to do sets of 2 single crochets together. So do your first one, and place your stitch marker into that first stitch and continue this for round 14. I have worked that, and now to finish off you want to pull your yarn out and your hook and cut your yarn, leaving a nice long tail, as you need to use this to sew up the back of the hair and also to attach it to the head. And then you want to thread this end through a yarn needle, and we're going to do the same thing as we did with the top of the head. We're going to weave this needle in and out of these stitches to sew up the top. So like that, and now pull tight. And there we have finished our hair. And now you want to secure this end by going in and out of these stitches at the end here, and then you can weave it in, and do not cut this off as you can use it to help sew the hair to the head. So if you take your doll, the hair sits on the head like this, so it's kind of like a hat. You have the seam. The seam here should go along the bottom like that, and then the hair is like that. So that is how the hair sits. And then using this end, you can pull this in and attach it so that you don't get a point here. And now we can move on to the very last part of our doll, which is the two little bunches at the bottom. So to begin the bunches, you want to take your yarn, so the colour that you want to do the bunches in, and make a magic circle. So in the same way as we did for the arms. Like that. And then you want to chain 1. And now for round 1, we are going to do 4 single crochets into the magic circle. So 4 single crochets, like that. And then you want to pull this yarn tight. So pull it nice and tight. And there we have finished round 1. And now for round 2, we are going to do 2 single crochets into each of those 4 stitches. So you want to do 2 single crochets into each stitch for round 2. So insert your hook into the first stitch and do 2 single crochets into this stitch. And you could use your stitch marker to mark the first single crochet of the round, but I am just going to count. And then you want to do 2 single crochets into the second stitch along, and then the third, and then the fourth. So do 2 into all 4 stitches, like that. And now for round 3, we are going to do 2 single crochets into one stitch and then 1 single crochet into the next stitch all the way along. So we're doing 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Now I have finished working that for round 3, and at the end of this round you should have 12 single crochets. And now round 4 follows the same pattern, but in this round we are going to do 2 single crochets into one stitch and then 1 single crochet into 2 stitches all the way around. So we're doing 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. So go down into this next stitch here and do 2 both into this one, placing the stitch marker into the first single crochet of the round. And then you want to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch along, and then 1 into the next. And just keep doing that for round 4. So there I have finished round 4, and at the end of this round you should have 16 single crochets. So now for the next 3 rounds, so for rounds 5, 6 and 7, you just want to do 1 single crochet into each stitch. So do 3 rounds of plain single crochet. So I have come to the end of round 7, so I have done 3 rounds of plain single crochet, and now we have 2 rounds left. So for round 8, we are going to do 1 single crochet into one stitch, 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 single crochets together over the next 2 stitches. So we're doing 2 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together. So you want to do 2 single crochets, placing the stitch marker into the first one. So there's 1 into that first stitch, and then do 1 single crochet into the second one along, and then do 2 single crochets together, and repeat this all the way around. So there I have finished round 8, and now before we move on to round 9, which is our final round, you want to take a bit of stuffing and add it to the bunch or the bunches, and make sure that the end from where you did the magic circle has been pulled through to the outside first. So add some stuffing, and now for our final round we are going to do 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets together all the way around. So do 1, 2 together, 1, 2 together for round 9. Now I have come to the end of round 9, and then to finish off this round you want to add a little bit of last stuffing and then fasten off, leaving a long tail, as you can use this tail to sew up the top of the bunches. And then you want to finish off by weaving the end in and out of the stitches, just as we did with our other pieces. So I have weaved that end in and out of all these stitches at the top, and then you want to finish off by pulling this end nice and tight to close up the bunch. So there we have done our first little bunch there, and you can now secure this end into the top, and then you want to make a second one in the exact same way. And then once we have sewn the hair onto the head, you can then sew the bunches to the bottom here, so to the bottom of the hair, right by the arms, using that long end that we just used to sew up the top. So now we have done all of the pieces for our doll. We have the body, the arms, the hair and the bunches, and it's time for us to move on to sew them all together. So this is the last step, sewing them all together. And you want to start off by sewing the arms to the body. And if you have a look at my finished doll here, you want to sew them in this position. So do not sew them right up here into the neck, but make sure you're not sewing them too far down. You want to kind of sew them right in here, right before the neck. And these dolls do have a little dress, so if you do find that this does look a little bit messy, don't worry, it will all be covered up. So here I have my doll, and I have my first arm, and you want to take this long end from where we just did the whip stitch and thread it through a yarn needle. And I'm going to sew the arm in this position here. So it's not up into the neck, it's just underneath it on the side here. So make sure it's center in the middle of the body, on the center here. So I'm going to start off by laying the arm where I want it to be. So like I said, not up into the neck, but here, and kind of make a note of what row you're going into, as you can go into the exact same row on the other side. So place the arm where you want it to be, and then go through the arm and then through to the body in the place where you want it, and pull the yarn through. And this is kind of hard to show on camera, but pull the yarn through, and I would make sure there that you have it exactly where you want it, so that you have it positioned on the side in the right place as well. And then go in through the next stitch, and then go into the row that you are working along, into the next stitch or the next space, and pull the yarn through. And keep doing this until you have secured the arm. Once you have gone all the way along your arm, you may want to go back, so kind of go underneath and secure along the bottom as well, but just make sure that your arms are nice and secure onto the body. And now we can add the hair, and I have just done one arm here, but I will go and do the other one later. So you want to take your hair piece like this, and make sure that this end is on the back here, so it's been pulled through to the outside. And this seam here, so where the yarn stops, needs to be at the bottom of the back. So place it on the doll's head with the seam on the bottom of the back. So like that. So there I have the hair in the place that I want it. And then you want to take this bottom yarn, so the yarn right at the bottom of the bottom seam, and thread it through a needle. And we're going to sew this piece here to the head, and you're kind of doing the whip stitch all the way along. So you want to go into the head, then into the stitch, then the head, the stitch, the head, the stitch, and make sure that all the time you are keeping it where you want it to be and it's not becoming misshapen. So sew the hair to the head. And then once you have done that, you can then add the bunches, and that's really easy. Just sew the bunches to the bottom here. So you should have one on either side. So then once you have finished making your doll, the last thing that you want to do is make their dress. And to do their dress, I already have a tutorial on my channel showing you how to do this dress. And this dress was part of my Crochet Animal series. And I will leave a link to this dress in the description box below this video and also in the cards. So you want to go onto that tutorial and follow all the instructions to make this dress. But in the tutorial, it states that you will need to use a 3.5mm hook for the dress. But for these dolls, you will need to use a 3mm hook. So to make the dress, you will need a 3mm crochet hook and fine yarn, and that makes it the correct size for these dolls. And if you have the written pattern, then the instructions for the dress are all included on there. So go ahead and make the dress using a 3mm hook and fine yarn, and you can do as many rows as you want to make it whatever length you like. And then once you have done that, the very last thing you need to do is add the face. So this is what I have done for the face. I just added 2 little eyes using some black yarn, and then a little nose using the skin colour yarn, and I just did a few stitches to create the nose. But you could add whatever face you like. For eyes, you want to take your yarn needle and a black piece of yarn, and we are going to go to our face like this, and you want to make sure that you have the hair sewn on before you add the face. And this is where I sewed on the eyes. So I sewed them about 4 stitches or 4 rounds down from the hairline, so you can see like that. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm actually going to go down one more and go to the center and go through 1 stitch and out the other side like this. So you're just going along 1 stitch and pull your yarn through, and then you want to come back around and go in through the same space here, the same stitch and the same stitch on the opposite side like that, and pull your yarn through, and do that 2 or 3 times for the eye. So I'm going to do that once, pull it through, and then I'm going to do a second time, and try to make sure that you're not picking up any stuffing. And there I have completed the eye, and pull this nice and tight. And then to finish off the eye, you can go in through this space and then come out anywhere on the head and pull it tight, and do that with the other end. And there you have done one eye, and then you want to do a second eye in the same way, and then the nose is using the same method, but you are going to go across 2 or 3 stitches, and you can make the nose to any size that you want. So once you have done that, so once you have made all of the parts to your doll, and you have sewn the arms to the body, and you have sewn the hair to the head and the bunches to the hair, and then you have added the little face, the last thing that I decided to do was add a little ribbon here, or a little piece of yarn, to each of the bunches, and then you want to weave all of your ends into the inside of your doll. And then the final thing that you will need to do is, if you have a look at the doll here, you may have noticed that there is a gap here, and you need to sew that up just using a piece of the skin colour yarn and your yarn needle. And then once you have done that, we have finished. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it easy to follow. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos, and please like this video if you did enjoy it. And in the description box below this video, I will leave a link to where you can find the written pattern for these dolls, and also a link to my Instagram and Twitter accounts. So I always like to post updates and pictures on there, especially Instagram, and I would love to see photos of your crochet work on there as well. So if you do go ahead and make these dolls, I would love to see a photo of them on Instagram. And thank you again for watching. Bye!